Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak here at Podcast. Good morning. It's Friday the 7th of November. I'm Caroline Hepker in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, Tesla shareholders approve Elon Musk's record-breaking $1 trillion pay packet.
OpenAI CEO Sam Altman rejects the need for government bailouts as lofty tech valuations weigh on the market.
Plus, global studies how the UK's VAT squeeze is driving Britain's top private schools to chase new money overseas.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Tesla's shareholders have approved a $1 trillion compensation package for CEO Elon Musk. More than 75% of votes were cast in favour of the payout. It clears a path for Musk to expand his stake in Tesla to 25% over the next decade. Here's Bloomberg Tech's Ed Ludlow.
For Elon Musk, this was about having more voting power and voting control. And for those institutional investors that voted no, they were worried about concentration of voting power that he had and dilution for them. In the end, voters have overwhelmingly come out, 75% of them or more, and said, we're happy to hand over more control to Elon Musk and keep him in the driver's seat to realise these longer-term goals in robotics and autonomous driving.
Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow. To achieve the full payout, Musk will have to deliver on targets to significantly expand Tesla's market value. The company's shares were little changed in Thursday's post-market trading.
OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman says he doesn't want a government bailout if the company's plans to spend $1.4 trillion on artificial intelligence go wrong. Writing on social media, the boss of the world's most valuable startup said he doesn't want government guarantees for its spending on data centres. It comes after OpenAI's CFO, Sarah Friar, hinted at a role for the US government to backstop financing for AI in an interview on Wednesday. The comments come as investors grow increasingly concerned over stretched AI valuations. Ven Ram is Bloomberg's cross-asset strategist.
By now, it's kind of almost universally acknowledged that we are marching steadily towards an equity bubble. The S&P 500 is trading at 26 times prospective earnings, the Nasdaq 100 at a staggering 32 times. And those are levels that are punitive and have seldom proved sustainable in the past. The thing with this rally, the rally this year, is that almost every investor knows it's all going to turn into pumpkins and mice at midnight. Only, as Buffett would say, no one in the room has a clock.
Ven Ram speaking there as the tech-heavy Nasdaq fell almost 4% from its record at the end of last month, but it's still up nearly 20% so far this year.
Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban visits the White House later, hoping his friendship with Donald Trump can spare his country from US sanctions on Russian oil. Bloomberg's Mikhail Kubala has more.
A year after cheering Donald Trump's re-election, Viktor Orban is coming to Washington with a raft of offers and a request. The Hungarian Prime Minister wants a reprieve from US sanctions on Russian oil. They threaten to raise fuel prices back home and deepen troubles ahead of next year's election. In exchange, sources told Bloomberg he is coming to the White House with pledges to purchase American LNG and nuclear fuel. The scramble for a deal marks an ironic turn for Orban. He once counted on his ties to Trump for political gain, but is now in damage control mode as the US president tightens penalties on Moscow. In Brussels, Mikhail Kubala, Bloomberg Radio.
Here in the UK, the Bank of England has warned that Chancellor Rachel Reeves will deliver her budget amid weak investment, rising unemployment and slowing growth. The central bank held interest rates at 4% in a 5-4 vote that laid the groundwork for a December cut yesterday. The bank's governor, Andrew Bailey, told Bloomberg that the UK's monetary policy still remains restrictive for the moment.
Now, in August, I would say I was concerned more on the upside risk. But I think the news that we've had subsequent to that has left me in a more balanced position. So that was very much my view. But as I've said a number of times, we do need to see more evidence, because so far we've had one inflation number that's come in, under what we thought, which is obviously good. We need to see some more.
That was the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. He went on to say that he is committed to serving out his full 8-year term as governor. His comments came after Reform UK leader Nigel Farage told Bloomberg's Michelle Hussein that the governor had, quote, a good run.
Comcast is in talks to buy ITV's media and entertainment unit in a deal that could value the business at around $2 billion. The conglomerate already owns rival broadcaster Sky's pay television business in Europe. Bloomberg understands the same advisors who worked on that deal 7 years ago, Morgan Stanley and Roby Warshaw, are currently advising ITV. If the deal does go through, the acquisition would dramatically shake up the UK broadcasting landscape.
Goldman Sachs is promoting the smallest proportion of women to managing director level since the CEO David Solomon took the top job in 2018. Bloomberg's Ewan Potts has more now.
Goldman Sachs says that women make up 27% of their new managing director class. That's down from 31% in the last set of similar promotions back in 2023. It also breaks a trend of consistent growth since 2017. CEO David Solomon's made numerous public pledges to advance women and improve inclusivity, telling Congress in 2019 that a core part of his tenure would be defined by that goal. In total, the bank promoted 638 staff to managing director. That's the highest number in 4 years. In London, I'm Ewan Potts, Bloomberg Radio.
Those are your top stories on the markets this morning. Eurostoxx 50 futures up 0.1%. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index is down by 0.9%. The Nikkei in Tokyo currently 1.3% lower as well. Wall Street futures are higher, 0.3 for S&P E-mini futures this morning. The 10-year Treasury yield up 2 basis points at 4.1%.
In a moment, we'll bring you more on that staggering pay deal that Tesla investors have approved for Elon Musk. There are obviously some strings and goals attached, plus a special report on how British private schools' moves to expand abroad haven't always gone exactly to plan. But another story has also caught our eye this morning, voting for next year's Oscars. It's not begun yet, but Bloomberg's Mark Laydorf has identified some key titles to be watching out for. Will you be watching any of these films, Stephen?
I'm going to try to do better this year than I have in previous years, because I feel like I've missed out on every important film over the past, decade. So it'll be maybe time for me to get back into it. The name that Mark says to watch is Sentimental Value. It's mostly in Norwegian, a family drama about a family trying to figure out what to do with the family home after their mother's death. Sounds fascinating, from the director Joachim Trier. Part of a broader trend that Mark identifies of more top quality films that aren't in English. This is something that we've seen creeping up through the Oscars as well, breaking out of the international film category and into the mainstream as well. And more productions being made in the US that are multilingual as well. Think of Emilia Perez being one recent example of those as well. Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's so many of them now. We're seeing more multilingual versions. And this, Mark says, is thanks to streamers. They're making more international content. People are getting more used to reading subtitles, for example. And this has me internally cheering.
Yeah, look, Norwegian may be a bit of a stretch for me, maybe for you also, Stephen. But no, you're right. I think maybe this is one of the big unexpected benefits of the streamers. People sometimes are concerned about the flattening of global culture and, everything sort of being made for an international global audience, but for the streamers largely in the US. But I think this is the kind of unexpected benefit, isn't it? That you get to watch programmes in all sorts of different languages. Well,
look, maybe it's a piercing of the Anglosphere. Maybe we're moving away from a position where, we only consume English language cultures in English language speaking countries. And certainly as someone who recently relocated to an extremely multilingual city where speaking two languages is not enough, I think that it's, a great thing that we should all be excited about, expanding our cultural horizons.
Love it. We will put a link to that story in our show notes.
Well, let's bring you more now on the story from Tesla and the $1 trillion pay package that was approved for Elon Musk. Our transport reporter Danny Lee joins us now for more. Danny, more than 75% of Tesla shareholders backed this. Was it an easy choice for them?
I think for the individual shareholders, clearly big fans of Musk, these are the typical kind of retail shareholders, overwhelmingly would have supported. But we saw this huge campaign over many weeks, obviously led by Chair Robin Denholm, to get people to support this, including institutional shareholders. Of course, we've seen a lot of advisory firms recommend voting against this pay package, this outsized pay package for Elon Musk. So there has been a lot of deliberation, particularly online, online campaigning for large firms who hold Tesla stock to vote in favor. And ultimately, what potentially looked like was going to be a very narrow vote was an overwhelming victory or consensus that Elon Musk should be given such a goal, such a juicy carrot in order to carry out what he wants to transform Tesla.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite a sort of bruising exchange, hasn't it, in some ways? But as you say, Musk does have to achieve quite a hefty series of benchmarks in order to get this money. Just talk us through the goals and actually how achievable they look now.
Yeah, I think that the word to describe all of this is very dizzying because Tesla right now is a 1.5 trillion company. Elon Musk has to take that to 8.5 trillion, and the kind of series of operational milestones he has to subsequently achieve. For example, the high end is a $400 billion adjusted profitability. That's such a crazy number. But these are kind of the stretch goals that the board has set. He also has to deliver 20 million vehicles, sell 1 million robots and robo-taxis. So these are all things which are obviously clearly designed to be stretched, and it's not going to be an easy task as Elon Musk has been given this kind of free rein to do what he needs. But at the end of the day, this 1 trillion doesn't really matter for Elon Musk so much. He was obviously recently awarded $30 billion by the Tesla board, but ultimately, he wanted more control over Tesla to pursue the kind of what he thinks are very valuable pursuits for his kind of dreams, his vision around artificial intelligence, driverless vehicles. So he will effectively be able to double his stake and have more control over Tesla. So this is probably the most important thing for him. And now he has the backing from an overwhelming level of shareholders.
And with that backing in place, then, does that give Elon Musk license to, tie in some of his other businesses as well? There was some talk of that around this shareholder vote too.
Oh, absolutely. I think for Elon Musk, given he wears many hats and has many roles, this is a huge mandate for him. And obviously for Musk on stage, talking to shareholders overnight, floated the idea of listing more of his companies as well. So all of these things to tie together, will ultimately make him a more powerful person and might ultimately help Tesla as well, as if all of the ecosystems that Elon Musk touches just becomes ever more valuable.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, Danny. Thank you so much for explaining it to us. Our transport reporter, Danny Lee, there on Tesla and the big new pay package that Elon Musk could secure. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this. The UK's 2,500 private schools are under pressure. This after last year's tax increase on fees. Backed by the government, though, a recent boom in British schools opening branches abroad has proven lucrative. But some of the expansions have come with some unsavoury business partners and the potential for reputational damage. Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo joins us now with this story. Tiwa, why are these schools so keen on opening branches abroad, overseas?
Well, quite frankly, a lot of them are looking for fresh revenue streams. In a lot of cases, these schools are very prestigious. They've got centuries-old brands, and now some of them are looking to capitalise on that. And it's a sector that's booming. We've seen a tripling of the number of British school campuses opening abroad since 2017. It's up from 51 to 151. And in terms of profits, they've also exploded recently. It's up 18 times over the last decade, reaching £29 million in the last academic year. And for private schools with charitable status, as most of them do have in the UK, they don't pay corporation tax on overseas earnings, so they're keeping a good proportion of this income. And when you also couple that with the fact that most British schools who open abroad work with foreign business partners on the ground who are able to assume most of the costs associated with launching, it does make for quite an attractive opportunity. And there's also demand from the parents abroad who otherwise would be sending their children overseas to the UK. This is a cheaper option. It allows them to still access that British education, but on their doorstep. And crucially, it allows them to pay the fees in their local currency. And that makes a big difference when you do take into account exchange rates. And looking back to the UK perspective and the landscape over here, you've got cost pressures tied to the government's introduction of VAT on school fees. You mentioned pupils are leaving the system at an accelerated rate, according to these private schools, and there's high inflation. So you can begin to see why setting up shop abroad does become attractive.
What are the risks, though, Tiwa, for these schools of going into business with foreign partners?
Well, these are the sorts of institutions that have educated prime ministers, for example. Some of them have brands that are so strong, they're almost sort of intertwined with the British identity and history. And so I think the main risk here is denting that image, specifically through the association with foreign business partners. In the story about this, which is out on the terminal this morning, we cover several openings, like Rugby School in Lagos, Nigeria this September. That's a project that's been financed by a firm called the Chagari Group. Their founder has faced several controversies. Just one example is that he had to pay $1.8 million to resolve allegations that he and others violated US election laws in 2021. That's according to the US Department of Justice. There's also openings elsewhere. For example, Harrow School is due to open in New York soon, and that's being backed by an Indian firm called Amity Education Group. That group had one of its business school licenses revoked by Indian regulators back in 2005. And since then, they've also been heavily criticised by US politicians about this upcoming New York opening. One of them said they were really sceptical about Amity's ability to educate US students, just given its lack of track record in the country. So with these business partners, I think schools aren't just risking their reputations here. They're also risking the trust of customers, both abroad and in the UK, who are paying significant amounts of money to access that history and what they believe is also a higher standard of education. But perhaps what they don't expect is proximity to controversy, especially through the foreign actors.
The thing I found interesting about your reporting, and that I didn't really know, is how the UK government is actually involved in the process when it comes to opening these schools abroad.
Yeah, I mean, it's been for some time now quite an explicit strategy. Under Theresa May's government, the Department for Business and Trade actually did have a document about their international education strategy. And as part of this, they planned to encourage private schools from the UK to access international opportunities. And they did this by connecting providers and investors. And this is actually still the case. I've spoken to the DBT and they told me that they still do help to introduce those schools that are interested in growing abroad to potential business partners. They did stress that they do encourage the schools to undertake their own due diligence. In the case of Rugby in Lagos, for example, that project seems to have received at least a stamp of approval from the British High Commission. They sent a delegation to visit the campus over the summer, and the High Commissioner described it as an outstanding example of UK-Nigeria collaboration. But the government is also supported by people on the ground, often known as export champions, and they're volunteers who are experienced UK exporters who support other businesses in their international trade journeys. I spoke to one of those people for this story who worked closely with the government on the opening of several schools abroad recently. And so it definitely seems like this is still a priority for the government. And perhaps that's not surprising because increasing exports is something the Chancellor has discussed and is already part of her economic strategy. So it's likely we'll see the government continue to be involved in this process.
Yeah, really fascinating. Tiwa Adebayo, thank you so much for your reporting. British private schools chase new money in New York and Singapore. It's on the front page of the Bloomberg.co.uk website and on the terminal. Thank you.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.